history is quirky. It's filled with all kinds of horrifying but also rather humorous ironies, I suppose. Dr. Ruth teaching a class on Judaism and the family with Yale's Rabbi James Ponette, both of whom are fellows in Calhoun College, the college named after one of the fiercest advocates of slavery, an architect for secession in the Civil War, an alum of Yale, that in 1933, when the university corporation, the fellows of the university, got together to name 7 new colleges they had built during this era of nightmare, racial cleansing in Europe, thought that they would name, or concluded that the most famous or important man of Eli in the world of politics was John C. Calhoun, and named a college after him. Fast forward some 60 years, 70 years, and I was asked to be the master, in the British parlance, not the American parlance, the master of Calhoun College. As a specialist in African American studies, the irony, of course, was too delicious to resist. And I host events in the house all the time underneath the portrait of John C. Calhoun. There's also a portrait of a young John C. Calhoun in my office. There are carved busts of John C. Calhoun all over the place. I'm reminded of history every day when I open my eyes. Dr. Ruth is a fellow of the college, and as such, offers master's tea once a semester, and has become my friend, something I'm quite proud to be able to claim and claim honestly. Dr. Ruth invited me down with my wife for her 80th birthday party. We sat in this auditorium and heard wonderful performances, joined her for the cocktail reception, and then for the dinner afterwards. And it was remarkable that Dr. Ruth danced everybody under the table, which may not surprise those of you who know her. It was also remarkable in a way that this African-American man who's head of a college, the master of a college named after someone who advocated the denial of my ancestors' existence or humanity, I knew a lot of the music that she was dancing to in some ways, because I grew up in an area in Washington, D.C., where I went to bar mitzvahs for about 2 years straight. Those were my first suits. History is filled with all these kind of ironies, and thinking of this exhibit of the interesting alliances between blacks and Jews at different points in time, the history is still with us. It will always be with us, and it's a history we need to talk about.
The Immigration Law of 1924 contained a clause which was racist and probably the best resonance we have of the fact that there are American roots to Aryanism. That law also contained a clause that allowed those Jewish professors to teach in black colleges if they were requested, and we had an organization to make that request. The Nuremberg laws, which are supposed to be the anvil, did not halt Jewish immigration. In fact, it caused, for a moment in history, a return of Jews to the homeland. And most of us who did escape fled after 1935. And finally, in the notion that defeated Germany was itself racked with racism, the high point of U.S. anti-Semitism was precisely in the year when we went on the offensive to unconditionally ruin and bring to its knees a German racist power. You have a racialist instrument liberating a more extreme racialist regime. A paradox, if you must know. The war that was fought in the Pacific is as racist on the American side as the war fought by Berlin in the East. It was a racialist war, a Vernichtungskrieg, a total war, and that may account for its bitterness. Thank you very much.
You all propose to have these individuals, as well as our society, address those issues, because it's very much prevalent.
They take our classes. I mean that actually quite seriously. One of my friends from high school who's African American wanted to know, once I got my PhD, why wasn't I going to teach at Cheney State? Why wasn't I teaching at Howard, at other historically black institutions? I'm like, well, I got a job where I had a job. I'm like, this is, be mindful of the fact that everybody needs to be taught. And I'm fortunate, I will be quite upfront, I'm very fortunate, extremely fortunate to teach at Yale. I'm very happy there, have incredible resources, but I also have students who need to be taught. And these are people who see themselves, rightly or wrongly, and for better or for worse, as the future leaders of the world. And if we don't teach them, we're all in trouble.
This gentleman.
Can you please let the other professor?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to respond to this?
Well, I think I understand the question. I don't know how to shape the future, but I want to point out to you that in our past, one of the things that I point out here is that I firmly believe that there would have been no real civil rights movement without World War II, because the thrust of that war in the Atlantic Charter, in its aims, in its ideology, in its turning the New Deal outward, was towards liberation. Liberation not only of blacks, but of everyone else. My paradox is that the instrument, the American people itself, was itself perhaps not the purest instrument, but the thrust of history goes forward. Somehow, it is not a racist soldier who loses his life in Europe, who didn't intend to free anyone, but somehow that is the way it goes. So I have great confidence that the arc of history, from the end of the war to the election of Obama, is ever forward. Perhaps some of us too slowly. It is that way. How it happens, and how we can make it happen, I don't know. I am a historian with my head screwed on backwards. I can tell you what happened. I don't know how to make it happen.